If your baby came at 8 months, there's probably a question that quietly keeps you up at night, and no doctor has fully sat down to answer it. Will my child grow up differently because of this? Could the early arrival leave hidden effects on their brain, their behavior, or their development years from now? For most of medical history, doctors believed the mother's body decided when labor began. That belief held for centuries, until a quiet discovery in a Texas research lab changed everything. The signal that begins labor doesn't actually come from the mother. It comes from the baby. And when a baby arrives at 8 months instead of 9, there is almost always a very specific reason hidden inside that signal. And once you understand what that reason is, that quiet midnight worry starts to feel a lot smaller. The science behind early arrival is one of the most reassuring stories in modern obstetrics, and once you see how it actually works, a lot of unnecessary guilt starts to dissolve. In 2004, Dr. Carol Mendelsohn and her research team at UT Southwestern Medical Center published a discovery that turned obstetric science on its head. They found that the trigger for labor is released by the baby's own lungs. Specifically, a protein called surfactant protein A, SPA for short, is produced when the baby's lungs are mature enough to breathe air. That protein floats into the amniotic fluid, sets off a chain reaction inside the mother's body, and labor begins. In other words, the baby is the one who decides when it's time to leave. The mother's body simply responds to the message. Here's where it gets fascinating. When a baby is born at 8 months, something has caused that signal to fire a few weeks earlier than expected. Sometimes the lungs reach a level of maturity that the body interprets as ready enough. In other cases, different systems in the pregnancy speed up the timeline together, but the baby is rarely arriving by accident. Most 8-month babies, what doctors call late preterm or moderately preterm infants, are responding to a real biological cue. Their tiny bodies are saying, in their own language, that being outside the womb is now safer than staying in. That's a hard sentence for any parent to hear. It's also a deeply important one, because your baby was making a choice. A second piece of the puzzle came from Australia. Dr. Roger Smith at the University of Newcastle spent years studying a hormone called corticotropin-releasing hormone, or CRH. He discovered that the placenta, that incredible temporary organ keeping your baby alive for 9 months, produces CRH in a slowly rising curve. He called it the placental clock. Every pregnancy starts that clock at a slightly different speed. In some women, CRH rises gently and labor begins right around 40 weeks. In others, the curve climbs faster and labor starts earlier. His research found that mothers whose CRH levels rose more steeply in the second trimester were significantly more likely to give birth in the 8th month. The clock was already ticking long before anyone could see it. And the next factor on this list is the one almost no parent talks about, even though it might be the most common reason of all. The placenta is one of the most underrated organs in the human body. It grows, feeds your baby, filters waste, produces hormones, and then it ages. Like every organ, it has a working lifespan. In some pregnancies, that lifespan runs out a little earlier than the calendar would predict. Blood vessels can narrow, nutrient delivery becomes less efficient, and oxygen exchange drops by even a small percentage. When that happens, the baby's body senses the shift long before any monitor can detect it. And the baby responds the way any intelligent system would respond, by getting out while the conditions are still safe. According to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, placental insufficiency is one of the leading causes of late preterm birth worldwide. So if your baby came at 8 months, there's a real chance your placenta quietly finished its work a few weeks early, and your baby was wise enough to listen. There's another factor worth being gentle with, because it carries a lot of unfair guilt for mothers who don't deserve any of it. Stress can influence the timing of labor, but not in the dramatic way that some online articles suggest. Dr. Pathak Wadhwa and his team at UC Irvine have spent years studying how chronic maternal stress affects pregnancy. Their research shows that sustained high cortisol levels, the kind produced by months of ongoing anxiety, grief, financial pressure, or trauma, can speed up the placental CRH clock by a measurable amount. Notice that word, sustained. A bad week didn't bring your baby early. A scary phone call didn't bring your baby early. We're talking about long, unbroken stretches of high stress that the body had to physically adapt to. So if you're listening to this and wondering whether your worry caused this, please breathe. Your worry didn't do this. Your body and your baby were navigating something much bigger together. Two other reasons matter here, especially if they apply to you. Twins and triplets simply outgrow the womb's comfortable capacity earlier. The uterus has limits, the placenta has limits, and the baby's bodies start signaling readiness sooner. And sometimes, a small, silent infection in the amniotic fluid or the cervix produces inflammation that the body reads as a danger signal, and delivery speeds up to protect the baby from harm. Your body has a built-in override switch, and it pulls that switch in favor of your baby every single time. So when you put all of this together, a much clearer picture emerges. A baby born at 8 months isn't a baby who failed to wait. They're a baby who received the signal, earlier than expected, that the conditions outside the womb had become safer than the conditions inside it. The lungs matured a little faster than expected. CRH levels climbed more steeply. Placental support began winding down sooner than the calendar predicted. And the maternal-fetal system did exactly what it was designed to do: protect the baby first. Here's the part most parents are quietly desperate to know, but rarely get told clearly. Babies born between 32 and 36 weeks, the medical bracket that covers most so-called 8-month babies, have excellent outcomes in today's world. According to data from the March of Dimes, survival rates at 32 weeks already exceed 95%, and by 34 weeks, they approach the rate seen in full-term babies. Late preterm infants may need a few extra weeks of warmth, careful feeding support, and close monitoring in the beginning, but most catch up developmentally within the first 2 years of life. Their brains continue to wire themselves outside the womb just as they would have inside it. Personality, bonding capacity, cognitive potential, none of that is decided by an early arrival. So what does all of this mean for you? If your baby came at 8 months, you weren't unlucky and you didn't fail. Your body and your baby made a complicated decision together, and that decision was made for a real biological reason, even if you'll never know exactly which one. The quiet worry you may have been carrying about doing something wrong can finally be set down. There's something quietly beautiful about realizing that birth isn't an event a mother decides. It's a conversation between her body and her baby. A conversation in chemicals, hormones, and signals so subtle that science has only just begun to understand them. When your baby arrived at 8 months, they weren't rushing, they were communicating. And you, without ever consciously knowing it, were listening with your entire body. That isn't a small thing. That's the quiet foundation of every bond you'll ever build with them. If this helped you see your baby's early arrival in a new light, consider subscribing. We release new videos every week about the hidden world inside your baby's mind. And if this video brought you any comfort, a like genuinely helps other parents find this channel when they need it most.